Good afternoon, everybody, and you're very welcome to Community Finance Ireland's webinar event today. It's an all-Ireland event, and we're joined by an all-Ireland panel, and we're very pleased to also be joined by all of you who are listening in. My name is Lita Notte, I'm the facilitator today, and just to let you know that for a little couple of housekeeping issues, we are on Facebook Live at the moment, and we're also recording, so if any of the chat and the conversation that you want to listen back to it, you'll be able to do that next week. So hopefully all the technology will work, as we always have a little bit of a worry bead in the background in relation to that. But I think we've got a really good group of people to discuss our theme about the road ahead offers opportunities. And I think it's a really positive sentiment at the right time in our evolution of living with pandemic, through it, post it, and onwards and upwards. So it's an all-Ireland gathering, as we said. So Community Finance Ireland is an all-Ireland brand, and we're delighted to welcome our panel today. So Conor McGale from the Rural Community Network in Northern Ireland will be very familiar for those of you from Northern Ireland who are joining us. Conor supports 300 members within the Rural Community Network. He works across on helping them with fundraising, social impact, good governance, and so on. And as with a degree in psychology, he probably knows more about how we tick than anybody here in the room. We have Larry O'Neill from the South Dublin County Partnership, and 15 years working with social enterprises, understanding the history of social enterprise and then the future of it too. He's based in Wicklow, and you're very welcome, Larry. Thank you for joining us. And from Community Finance Ireland ourselves, our Associate Director, Phelim Sharvin, who works across Northern Ireland and has about 170 clients that he works with at the moment, with a portfolio of 13 million. And a new member to Community Finance Ireland, Emmett O'Hara. You're very welcome, Emmett. Opportunities do exist in the pandemic because the opportunity for you to come and work with us arrived. So you're very welcome. And Emmett is based in Bettystown in County Meath and has about 200 clients with a 15 million portfolio. So you're very welcome, gentlemen. It's an all-male panel today, which is kind of unusual, but a good panel and a good sense of the kind of things that we want to talk about. So the road ahead offers opportunities. One of those opportunities that Community Finance Ireland is looking at today is that they've launched an all-Ireland 10 million recovery loan fund. So finance into the sector will be an important part of the kind of opportunities that people see across the island of Ireland. And I want to start with just having a sense from yourselves as to what and how the different approaches across the restrictions, the supports, and the vaccinations in COVID have impacted communities. And I know, Larry, when we were speaking earlier this week, you had some kind of insights as to how you saw the pandemic and its impact on communities, because actually with the whole island of Ireland, we've been at different points at different times. And I think, you know, some have been a little bit ahead and some have been further behind. So give your thoughts on what you think about that, Larry.
I suppose I could say, first of all, thank you for inviting me to partake in the webinar. I could concentrate for the next 30 minutes on the negatives of CV19, and I'm not going to do that. I think we've got to look for the positives that are there. And one of the things that shines for me is the community spirit that happened on this island in every nook and cranny, where they came together to try and defeat the worst impacts of COVID-19. They looked after the aged population. They got together and they kept as many things open as they possibly could. And they supported our frontline workers in a way that I have never seen in my lifetime. It's certainly a once-off, and I hope it is a once-off and I never see it again. But let's take the positives. Community spirit is alive and well in Ireland.
Yeah, and I think I agree with that, because that kind of rise of we're all in it together was really amplified with the pandemic. We couldn't, none of us could opt out actually, because it impacted every single person in every community. Conor, in Northern Ireland with your members, what have you seen? Was it the same?
Yeah, pretty much, Lita, in terms of that. I suppose the slight difference is because of I suppose the two jurisdictions in terms of administration of a vaccine rollout and in terms of local restrictions, played some part in terms of there wasn't really that much, whilst it was recommended that people shouldn't maybe travel beyond 5-10 kilometres, it wasn't really strictly enforced, so it's very much down to the individual. But certainly one thing that was consistent throughout the whole island was basically how local groups, whether it's sports groups, community groups, social enterprises, etc., basically rallied in terms of addressing local need. doing things in terms of food deliveries, pharmacy deliveries, etc. Trying to convene and trying to get the information flow was very important, I felt, as well too, in terms of getting that consistency about maybe what was said at a government level, and then broken that down in local community level and how that affected the local community groups as such. So, social media was awash with a lot of great stories in terms of how people reacted in their local communities, how people sort of banded together really in terms of how they worked in partnership with other organisations in their area to try and deal with and try and assist those that are most vulnerable. And you've seen that right across the island. I don't think, irrespective of what part of the country you're in, I think it was very, very noticeable about how how people more or less just didn't really take much promotion in that. They more or less just jumped straight away and tried to help those in their local community.
Yeah, and I suppose we've seen quite a few of our own client base, I suppose, finding a way through without actually creating any danger for people. I think we will have kind of seen quite a number of them working around the restrictions. I mean, here where we're based in RD, we see a lot of people going back and forth across into different counties. We've got a lot of people going cross-border on a daily basis. Even ourselves, Emmett and Phelim, we were doing a cross-border kind of meeting up in Newry there last week within guidelines. But I think what you do is you find a way around it. Emmett, in particular around the kind of approaches within the Republic of Ireland, and we did have some department introductions earlier this year. Was there anything in particular that you saw around your region?
Yeah, well, look, I'm based in Bettystown there on the east coast, Lita, and what I would have seen, particularly at a local level, is right on, without focusing on the negatives, but the restrictions had a very obvious effect on how people in the community work, meet, socialise, play, and interact and travel. But I think the government, at a government level, at policy level, you can see it that Heather Humphrey's department were very, very keen to get out and promote support across, be it GAA clubs, be it community working homes, all these types of initiatives that I think have accelerated that change across the community. And certainly along the East Coast, which would be a fairly commuter-heavy type belt, I think that's accelerated that change, we'll say, towards people being able to spend more time in their communities, and those supports are fairly evident in that regard.
And then, Phelim, we've seen some government intervention in the north in relation to the social enterprise sector and in the charity sector in general. So you had some first-hand experience on working with the Department of Communities there. Can you give an insight into what that did and how that might have worked across Northern Ireland?
Well, yeah, you're correct in saying so, Lita. We work closely with the Department for Communities, in fact, to co-design and co-deliver a fund that helped support firstly the social enterprise sector and then secondly the charity sector. Now, that's seen us work with on each occasion with up to maybe 800 groups on each occasion. Now, that meant that you were getting a good coverage right across the sector, small and large charities, small and large social enterprises across a range of subsectors. So for us, it was very interesting to see that, because it allowed us to understand how these organizations were actually faring out during really difficult times. And it was interesting to hear from them how they were experiencing things. It was interesting to hear how, in many cases, some of their government partners had stayed close to them and provided support to them. So that worked for them at that time, and it was good to hear that. But also some interesting stories about other organizations who had pivoted and repurposed themselves. And, one that springs to mind is Access Employment, who have a water bottling plant. Clear Water is the product that they provide. What those guys did there was that and some of the guys will be aware, they repurposed their facility to develop hand sanitizer. So it was interesting to see what they did in one case, but there was many cases of that where people stood up and were counted.
Yeah, and I suppose it's important to have those kind of cross-border operations, if you're talking about people moving around the country and, seeing the government working at different stages and then the different community projects responding. Conor, how important do you think cross-border operations are? What can we do to continue to facilitate that? You'd spoken to me earlier this week about working with projects as far as Skibbereen in West Cork, is that right?
We've sort of been lucky in terms of, because of various other different funding mechanisms, as well as working with yourselves, have been able to do for cross-border cooperation. So not just assisting members maybe in the border region to facilitate with like-minded organisations in the Republic of Ireland, it's also to do as well too with regards to ourselves around shared learning, collaboration, seeing what projects work and different ones. So for example, we're having discussions for the next couple of weeks around the digital divide, and particularly about our whole issue has always been around a balanced economy in Northern Ireland, and that has been about how people can start to work smarter and more effectively from home or within their local communities. So for example, we've had discussions with Ludgate and Hub and Sneem as well too, in terms of how they were very innovative in terms of people not having to travel or commute anymore, that they were able to do their work in local hotspots or local sort of hubs, that community facilities or buildings that were repurposed to do that as well too. We talked to our Western Development Commission, they're based in the west of Ireland as well too, who we're talking with in terms of how local rural communities there have been able to do the rural broadband in terms of rural connectivity to assist in terms of work and in terms of better work. But one of the most obvious ones as well too is that we had previously worked with NUI Galway around the Diploma of Community Development Practice and that as well too, which is a big qualification for a lot of community development practitioners in Northern Ireland. And we had sort of had not been able to sort of secure funding in order to continue that work, but we've kept sort of discussions going there. So pleased to sort of say as well too, we'll be doing that again this year, again because of that partnership with NUI Galway. So it's vital on a variety of different forums that we represent as well, like many of the people's in the room and yourselves.
Larry, you had talked to us about an example that you'd worked with Derry in terms of that kind of cross-border ability to learn in from each other. Do you want to share with the listeners a little bit about that project? Because I found that one really interesting as well.
It's actually based in Dublin. It's Recreate is the name of it. And I have to say that we got a lot of support from a like project in Belfast. We worked as partners. Our first delivery of materials to use for the educational purposes came from Belfast, free of charge. They had an open book relationship with us where they would actually show us the costs, show us all the mechanisms and show us the supplier list, all subject, of course, to data protection. But I think we share best practice right across the border, have done for a long number of years, and that north-south connection is really important to us, as is the east-west connection with Wales and Scotland. And I think there is a forum for social economy which represents the 4 jurisdictions, and I've attended that as well. But I do think that the sharing of best practice is an area where we can score very, very highly, and we can really push the social economy message out there of communities doing it for themselves and getting the support and recognition from government. I would say one thing that we did learn was that you don't sell it too cheap, and we need to make sure that when we sell a service to the state, that the state actually pay for that service and don't abuse the goodwill of local communities.
And I suppose the goodwill of the local communities is really part of the kind of ongoing vibrancy of social enterprise and community projects north and south, because ultimately with a lot of people pivoting and working and trying to help fill gaps, we do have a lot of kind of volunteering fatigue. I just wondered, did anybody have any thoughts on remote working and the ability to work from home and reduce your commuting activity? Emmett, we'd spoken about this the other day in relation to how that might actually give us the benefit of new volunteers and people having new spare time to actually get involved.
Yeah, I think certainly around Dublin and the counties around it, like Louth, Kildare, Meath, etc. There's a large commuting population gone in out of their daily towns and villages into Dublin. Okay, so they're bringing that expertise and that time lost with them in terms of their daily commute. So what I've seen, certainly alluded to it earlier, just around my kids' sports clubs and stuff like that, is that people are there more often and more regularly and can now kind of bring that time and their expertise to the area. So I think the remote working thing is going to have, aside from the social benefits as well, I think it's going to have probably an economic benefit in terms of the towns and villages around Ireland, and particularly around the commuter belt in Dublin, the likes of a Bettystown or a Laytown or a Balbriggan or wherever, because people are going to go out for that cup of coffee or grab that sandwich or whatever it is, spend time in that GAA club or the soccer club and bring that bit of vibrancy back, instead of maybe spending 40, 50 hours a week between working and commuting in and out to Dublin. So I think that benefit is going to have to ripple out throughout the community. And it's real positive.
Yeah, I think it offers a great opportunity for people to actually, if they were time poor before and they wanted to give, they probably have a bit more time that they can give back. I wonder, Larry, in the social enterprise space in particular, is there anything that you feel would be benefiting them in terms of this, you know, remote working and the ability for communities now that were losing people, actually, they're coming back in? Anything in particular that you've noticed?
Yeah, I certainly, before COVID-19, we had seen a detrimental approach to community and community participation in local organisations. And we've seen that being checked. I think for social economy projects, it means that there's an expertise available over a blended approach, whether that be Zoom or whatever modem they're using. And that becomes more available to social economy projects than it was before that, where people had to travel to meetings. That's certainly a big thing. I think the other thing is the self-reliance of communities has come back into focus, and their resilience has come back into focus big time. And I think we need now to take those steps to exploit that for their own benefit. I think it's an easy sell with the government at the moment. They have been extremely supportive to all sorts of measures where the community are doing things for themselves. Our vaccination program in the South would not work if it were not for volunteers. And that's not to take the role of the state and the civil servants here, but the volunteers have been the backbone of our vaccination program.
And I kind of agree with you. I think also the thing with the volunteers is that, you know, for very many of them, they've been involved over a long period of time. This isn't something that they just come in and do it for 6 months. What we're seeing with most of our clients is that their volunteering group have been with their projects for maybe 10, 12, maybe even 15 years. So the period of the pandemic is just a very small period for that kind of, what I call that long-term commitment that people have. And Emmett, I know we had some good news there last week on one of those projects, which really is very heavily dependent on volunteers, is the Fort Dunree in Donegal, you know, the lovely visitor centre that they have up there, and they've just got 12 million funding. So that will help with the volunteers and the next phase of that particular project. But they've been working on that for nearly 15 years. Would that be right?
Yeah, I think they're one of our very first clients, Lita.
Yeah.
And what you allude to there is correct, in that there probably has been a significant time investment into that. But just going back to your comment there around, you know, volunteer fatigue and stuff like that, I think what people are seeing, and again going back to having the time, is that you are going to maybe see an influx of hopefully some fresh blood, fresh thinking and fresh ideas. Because right, aside from the time element Larry alluded to there is the technology piece there as well, where people, if they haven't got to jump in a car and go to wherever it is, they can do it over Zoom and bring their ideas and their expertise to bear. So I think that, coupled with hopefully a sea change from a government standpoint towards investment and recognition of the sector and the benefits of it, that maybe you just might see a wider development across the country in that regard.
And I think one of the things that we're always talking about with our own client base is, you know, to review your physical assets as well as your human assets. They're an important part. They're integral together in terms of creating the project and having that sustainable footprint of social impact, so that you can continue to evolve as you go along. Phelim, we talked earlier about some of the projects that you know, could avail of the new recovery loan campaign and the finance. I mean, one of the things is, yes, you're looking for people and assets, but your physical assets, but you're looking at the funding and making sure that you can actually plan ahead. Because I think if people are seeing opportunities, as we've seen with our client base, you know, the funding is going to be an important part of the overall activity that they do. So talk a little bit about the All Ireland Recovery Loan Fund and why it's so important at this point in the evolution out of pandemic and into the next new normal.
We'll follow on what you guys have said there, and you've mentioned it, Lita, about the physical infrastructure that needs to be bolstered, needs to be further developed as we move out of COVID. Let's say it's very, very important that these communities, particularly rural communities, have full access to services and facilities. That allows these new volunteers. That allows these the influx of new people into the sector to actually avail of the services and the facilities that they desire to be involved in. And that's what it's about here. So it's keeping up with that and then building forward. So the All Island Recovery Loan Fund, and indeed CFI, Community Finance Ireland, as an organisation, I feel will have quite an important role to play there. There'll be other funding available, other capital funding streams available in both jurisdictions across the island. And Community Finance Ireland is tasked with working within that environment, providing support that partners other funding and enables these community-led organisations to deliver on their plans. And it's the plans that they have developed from the grassroots, from the community within which they operate, to deliver the facilities and services that work for that particular community. And I think the All Island Recovery Loan Fund is well placed to provide the flexible finance, be it term loans and bridging loans, but also be a good sounding board for the people when they're developing their plans. And as these community-led organisations, be it a sports club, be it a childcare organisation, a training provider, as they repurpose and move forward and try to trade forward, let's say, I think the All Island Recovery Loan Fund is very well placed to provide a product and a service that is suitable to them. And I think that's probably the most important thing, something that is well suited to their needs.
Yeah, and I know Larry had said to me earlier this week about the fear of debt for some of your social enterprises, and I suppose this is a kind of an ongoing kind of debate. Those that benefit from debt and take it as a team and pull it down and plan ahead. I suppose as we move into new opportunities, is debt and management of debt something that you'd like to see more from your community?
Yeah, I think it needs to be promoted as a very strong aspect of the way we do our business. It's there in the private sector. People borrow to make money, and let's be unashamed about that. If you take your basic Meals on Wheels and you look at the standards they're being asked to deliver at now, their vans have to be HACCP qualified, their kitchens have to be HACCP qualified, they need top class equipment, and it's only right that age group should receive a top quality product. But that costs money. So do you delay the input, or do you go to the likes of community finance and say, look, we need X to do Y? And once we have that done over the next 3 years, we'll actually increase what we're doing, but the standard and quality increases. I think we must do that. I think this idea of everything has to be bigger and brasher is not what I actually envisage for our local economies. I think local and high quality actually are synonymous, but they really need to borrow outside the normal fashion that they do right now to provide the finance and the capital to do that. I think we should promote it as a very strong positive thing.
And I think, Larry, your point is well made, because Emmett, we spoke last week actually with a client in the Republic, Let's Get Talking. So they're come to you, you've given them some new finance, and talk to the audience just very quickly before we're running out of time. But it's an important part to see what that debt has done for Let's Get Talking and the facility that they've been able to deliver as a result.
Absolutely, yeah. And just when we're talking about debt, it wasn't a particularly onerous financial commitment they took on. It was a relatively modest amount of money. But Let's Get Talking is a mental health organisation, which is based in the West predominantly. But given the scope of the pandemic over the last 15 or 16 months, they've actually spread across the country to numerous locations in Munster and Leinster. So that has allowed them to provide a good service, an excellent service, in fact, and a well-needed service. And just going back to Larry's point, I think that Community Finance Ireland provide an advisory service there as well. And groups need to take the fear out of debt and realise that debt ultimately will provide them, right, A, with an excellent product, but B, with self-reliance and independence in the longer term to make their organisation more sustainable. So I think we need to get that message out there that, we're not here to sell debt, inverted commas. We're here to provide an advisory service as much as anything. And if it's not the right thing for a group to do or the right timescale, then, we're in a position to give that advice as well.
I think that's fair enough. I mean, Let's Get Talking have seen a 53% increase into the calls into their centre at the moment because people need their service, and the funding that they've been able to get with us helps them to keep that pipeline open for people who need it over the next year to 2 years. The All Ireland Recovery Loan Fund, let's just summarise very quickly what we've got on that. So we're open for applications from today. The fund covers bridging and term loans. Phelim, help me out there on some of the other details that you're going to be offering to new clients that come and call us.
Any new clients or any existing clients that need to avail of loan finance and presence to deliver out on their plans, I think the important thing is that Community Finance Ireland, through this All Ireland Recovery Loan Fund, stand ready to listen to your plans, to understand your plans, and to try and finance those. So the best thing to do is to get in touch with us and discuss your plans, because we're well placed to support you. And the finance that will be provided through the loan fund, it's a range of sizes. So we're going to go from the smaller end right up to the larger loans, but feel free to get in touch with us and discuss that, because I'm very confident that this fund is designed in a way whereby we can provide flexible loan finance, as you've said, Lita, term loan finance, bridging loan finance, and that can be used for a variety of needs. It can be used for the acquisition of property. It can be used as flexible working capital support throughout your social enterprise, similar to what Larry mentioned earlier on. It can be used for a range of purposes. I'm quite confident that the fund will be able to support social enterprises and community-led organisations right across the sector, and indeed right across the island.
And it's a great day to know that there's different types of supports available. We're going to wrap up now because I'm conscious that our time is up, but I just wanted to kind of quickly summarise. All Ireland collaboration is happening on a daily basis. The sector is working its way around and through, up and down, east, west, north, south, doing what they need to do. More collaboration, more sharing of insights of people, anything that we've learned. I think everybody will welcome to it. I think, Larry, your point is well made about the resilience of the sector and how they respond to challenges. I think the sector has always had challenges. Our client portfolio has seen that people respond. They will do everything that they can in order to continue to deliver their services and have success in their communities. So what I would say to everybody is thank you very much for your time. Anybody who wants to know anything about the loan fund, it's communityfinanceIreland.com. Anybody who needs any advice, Emmett and Phelim are available. And Conor and Larry, thank you so much for taking your time today and sharing your insights. And we look forward to, maybe we can invite you back for another one and you can give us some more insights 6 months from now. Thanks, everybody. Take care.